am I? What happened? God, I'm so thirsty. My eyes are slits, opening to a bright white light. That hospital smell, antiseptic along with a bleachy clean scent, permeates the air. Heavy, stiff sheets feel like lead. The sound of women's voices register in my ears. I strive to push drugged cobwebs out of my brain. I lick my cracked lips. I try to swallow what seems like wool forced down my throat. My hand reaches for my baby. Where is my hard hill of a belly? A soft, empty sack replaces where my baby lay yesterday. I panic. I don't remember giving birth. My last memory is unbearable pain, a masked doctor, a needle, and nothing. Where is my baby? Did the baby die? Did I have a boy, a girl? My mind is blank, my body deflated. All those months in my heart, I just knew my baby had to be a boy. I secretly called him Jamie. Now Jamie is gone. I struggle to push open heavy eyelids and take in my surroundings. I know I'm in a hospital in New Orleans. I know it's July 1967. I know I was admitted yesterday in hard labor, but what happened after that? A small group of women, beds facing each other, forming a circle, fill the maternity ward. Am I dreaming? No one is paying me any mind. Invisible, I observe them, these laughing women. They chat softly, faces glowing. Each eagerly tells her story. I longingly watch as they sip from green glasses. God, I am so thirsty. They are all older than me. After all, I'm just a teenager. Their chatter goes on relentlessly. As I listen, I realize they're talking about their babies, their deliveries, and their husbands. I look away. I am not one of those women so confident, so full of laughter. They will keep their newborns. They will go home to their families, their husband, and they will love and raise their babies. They will know their children forever. But I am different. I have no wedding ring. My baby is a secret and will not go home with me. Closing my eyes, a hard lump grows in my throat. Well, our new mom is awake. The loudest woman in the group of new mothers announces, "You are out, sugar. I mean out." She has a strong New Orleans accent. She's too loud, too brash. I instinctively know the type, and she scares me to death. What will she ask me? Will she ask if it's a boy or a girl, or where is my husband? I begin to panic, but just then a nurse comes striding in the room. She heads straight to my bed, her hair a fiery red halo. Millions of freckles dot her smiling pink face. She chortles, "Well, I sure am happy to see you're finally awake. I bet you're as hungry as a mama bear." "Thirsty," I croak. Without asking, she pulls the stiff sheets from me as she simultaneously whips a curtain around my bed. My face flushes as she peers in between my legs and removes bloody pads from under me, replacing them with clean ones. The metallic smell of blood wafts upwards. All business, she pours me a drink of water. "You must be starved. I'll get some food up in here," she promises with a smile. She's so kind. My eyes tear up. Her eyebrows rise as she studies the clipboard chart attached to the foot of my bed. Does it say I'm an unwed mother? Does it say I can't keep my baby? I notice she's still smiling. I relax. It must not state that my baby will be put up for adoption. Tepid, stale water slides down my throat, and I almost cry from relief. I reach for the pitcher to pour more. Screwing up my courage, I whisper, "Ma'am, my baby? Is my baby? Oh, we'll be bringing them out soon." Bringing them out? As she whips back the privacy curtain and turns to face the woman, she loudly announces, Ladies, feeding time in just a few minutes." Delighted chirping sounds fill the room. Then turning back to me, she nods her head. Your baby boy's doing fine. I'll bring him to you. You feel up to feeding him? Oh, yes, please. My heart swells. She said, my baby boy is doing fine. I just knew it. My boy. My Jamie. My heart soars. I'm gonna hold him. It's too good to be true. I lay back and turn towards the wall, my eyes closed. If they think I'm sleeping, no one will talk to me, no one will ask me questions. Another nurse enters the room. Flowers for Miss Hammond. The brash woman is delighted. Oh, my husband Joseph, he's an angel. I open my eyes and watch as the nurse carries a huge vase of pink hydrangeas across the room. All the new mothers ooh and ah. There will be no flowers for me. Minutes later, the cries of newborns fill the room. My eyes open wide and I watch as two nurses enter pushing bassinets, wheels clicking. I pull myself up, sitting straight as I can, my heart pounding so loud I'm sure everyone can hear it. A petite nurse, a blonde pixie haircut, walks up to my bed, checks my name on the chart and bends to pick up a tiny bundle, wrapped in gray and blue flannel. My arms reach out and wonder fills me to the core. Here's your mama. This is Jamie. This is my baby boy. This is a feeling like I've never felt in my entire life. This is my heart about to be broken. I am complete, in awe, as my arms cradle this 7-pound baby boy, wrapped so tightly. Tears wet my face as I intently study the miracle in my arms. Soft, downy cheeks, almond eyes with lashes lying on those cheeks, a tiny, perfect rosebud mouth. I softly touch the pale fuzz that crowns his head. He has my nose, my mouth. I hold him close. I feel the solid weight of him. I breathe his tantalizing new baby scent. My son. My heart pounds next to his. Holding him is exquisite joy, exquisite pain. Tugging at my arm, the nurse says that I'm holding him too tight. She tells me to relax. Loosen your grip there, Mama. He's not going anywhere, she jokes. I flinch. Oh, Jamie, it's you, I whisper. Hey, I'm your mama. Tears fill my eyes. The activity in the room swirls around us, yet we are alone. Jamie is half awake. His eyes silvery slits, and he could care less about eating. His little face twists into a newborn grimace. His lips latch onto the brown nipple of the bottle, and he sucks. Me fascinated by this sight, him mouth working as he sucks, stops, seems to drop off again, sucks, stops, and his eyes open a tiny bit more. He's perfect. Jamie's mouth goes slack. He sighs. Formula rolls out onto his chin. Unquestionably beautiful. Oh, God, just look at him. I am mesmerized. I am smitten. I slip my finger in his mouth. He sucks. My chest hurts. Contractions squeeze my insides, hurting but in a good way. I grasp his tiny hand, and his fingers curl around my finger. His bottle forgotten, Jamie sleeps soundly against my heart. Please let this be forever. Too soon, Pixie Nurse returns. Her brow furrowed, she stomps directly to my bed. Maybe she sees he hasn't finished the bottle. Her face glares. She grabs the bottle and reaches for my son. Please, no, let me hold him a little longer, please. Time's up, he was supposed to say in the nursery. I'll take him now. The hostility in her voice startles and embarrasses me. She knows. I see it in her eyes. She thinks I'm a monster, a slut, an unfit mother, not even a mother, not worthy of holding and feeding my son. I jerk away, Jamie still clasped tight against me. The red-haired nurse has entered the room and walks directly to my bed. Like a huge, white, flapping stork, she hovers over me. I hold Jamie close and peer up at her. She takes in the scene unfolding before her. Pixie nurse standing, hands on her hips, me clutching my baby to my chest, wet eyes pleading. The women are all quiet now. Some infant cries out, hushed by a nipple. Silence now as they watch the drama unfolding in our tiny universe. Eager vultures they wait. I know what they're wondering. Why are they taking her baby so soon? What did she do? The kind red-haired nurse bends close. Let's not have any problems here, honey. Before I can protest, Jamie is expertly swooped out of my arms, carried away. As I watch the backs of the nurses leave the room, my world collapses. Cold. Emptiness fills me. Please, God, my son. The women resume feeding their babies, studying their perfect newborns' faces, and talking quietly amongst themselves, now determined to not meet my eyes. Not a word is said to me. I turn away from them, my eyes wet, squeezed shut, humiliated beyond words. Shame engulfs me, covering me like a film. My body trembles, holding back sobs. My fists clench. What did I expect? I am a mother, but am I? A real mother would take her son home. A real mother would not have her child pried from her arms. The women's grasping eyes burn holes through my soul. They know.
In a lot of ways, I'm an undercover Muslim. The only time I wear a hijab to cover my hair is when I visit the masjid, and my skin is fair, which is common enough among Muslims who are found in every part of the world. But people tend to forget that not all Muslims look alike, that we don't walk around announcing ourselves with veils and beards and mustaches. Because in the average American's eyes, Islam is not a global religion that belongs to over 1 billion people from all walks of life. Islam is tribalism, it's austerity, it's fanaticism, it's zealotry. It's not a suburban mother in jeans and a t-shirt, raised in California, speaking unaccented English, cruising around in a minivan. And it's precisely because people don't think I am a Muslim that I hear things. I hear things all the time. There was the time I was in John F. Kennedy Airport's baggage claim, my firstborn in my lap, and I offered a young woman struggling with the payphones my cell phone. After calling home, she sat next to me, and we talked about my baby and her siblings. Then she said, "They say there's going to be a war with Iraq. What do you think?" My heart sank. I could tell by the tone of her question, the way it leaned with a certain eagerness, how she wanted me to answer. And I didn't want to tell her that my parents were originally from Iraq and watch this moment descend into the kind of exchange that I'd revisit for years, thinking of all the things I should have said. So I tried to be vague, general, and said, "I don't support war of any kind." "Nobody does," she said, not taking the hint that I did not want to continue this conversation. "But don't you think we need to defend ourselves?" My heart rate quickened. "No, I don't," I said. "We're not at any risk from Iraq. But there's no telling what those people will do," she said. And with that, we had arrived at the destination I was trying to avoid. "I am one of those people," I said, wishing I could find more words. Better words. Words that would set her and everyone like her straight. But right away she backtracked and stumbled that her father once worked with a Muslim who was a really nice guy. Then, a few years later, there was my son's first day of preschool. I was sitting in the office, chatting with a Peruvian mother whose son also began school that day. The administrative assistant in the back office called out to the middle-aged woman working at the front desk. "Did you get a load of the father's name?" My breath suspended. I knew that post 9/11, my husband's once ordinary Arabic name now had inflammatory connotations. The front desk woman quickly got up, perhaps to inform her workmate that I was still there. When she returned carrying the scent of powdery perfume, she smiled at me awkwardly and asked, How many languages do you speak?" "3, I answered, my voice soft, and in that same nothing voice I asked, "Was that my husband's name she was referring to?" "Oh, no," she denied, shaking her head with so much exaggeration her beaded necklaces clacked together. That afternoon, I walked my son home, my heart racing. But with what? I had no idea how to name this knot in my gut. All I knew was that I felt so unsettled, so sick. Did this woman think she knew something about my husband because of his name? Was an Arabic name all it took to keep this woman from seeing my loving husband? My children's kind and generous father? Then, several years later, I was at my condo association's yearly garage sale, and a Palestinian woman asked me to give her several household items because she has diabetes and a sick husband and a daughter who was married to a terrible man who did not provide for their baby. I imagine she made these requests because we shared the same language, and I told her to take whatever she wanted, and then I helped her load her car, where I discovered a trunk full of car seats and baby clothes similar to the ones she picked from my driveway. I pushed away the sense that I'd been hustled with the reminder that the woman was clearly still in need. Later, at a lull in the garage sale, I walked over to my neighbor and her daughter and asked, "How's it going?" "Slow," she said. "Those Arab women are the worst. They always want something for nothing. But then I think about how awful those women's lives are, and I just want to ask them, do you know Jesus Christ?" I was certain I'd misheard. It wasn't possible that someone could say something so unbelievably misguided out loud. I replayed the entire conversation in my head, but before I could open my mouth and object, another neighbor walked by with his dog and stopped to chat. And I didn't know how to steer the conversation back so I could say, "Excuse me? What?" And then, just last summer, there was the time I was writing in a coffee shop, trying to tune out the interview for a sales job taking place at the table in front of me. The employer was grandiose and full of bluster, and he told his applicant, "Some people are going to say, 'What's a Mexican guy like you doing making $5,000 a week?' But I got no problem with you being Mexican. As long as we speak the same language, I can get along with anyone. I just don't like Arabs. They want to kill my people. They want to kill yours too. You were here for 9/11, right?" My fingers stopped moving over the keyboard. I commanded myself to react, to interrupt, to at least make light of his comments in an offhand way. But I was shaking. I pulled out my notebook, wrote his words down, and pretended this attempt at record keeping equaled doing something. Because I didn't know what else to do. That's the thing about small stings. They catch you off guard while you're just going about your daily business. At the airport, at school, at a garage sale, or in a coffee shop. You don't even know if it really happened. You were just going about your day when the breath got knocked out of you, and you asked yourself, Did I hear that right? And by the time you went over it in your head, it was too late. The moment had passed, and you couldn't go back because you didn't want to be that person, making a big deal out of something that was nothing. But really, what can I say in those moments? Someone, please tell me how to call out things when I'm completely stunned and a moment passes so quickly. When people walk away and subjects change before I've even had a chance to react. Because each one of these stings is like a brick stacking up inside of me. Their immovable weight reminding me that these are not isolated incidents from one person. This is how a lot of people feel. This is what slips out when they think no one of your kind is listening.
It was the summer of '89. I was 12 years old, had never been kissed, had yet bled, and I was mommy's girl, a good girl. My parents had just divorced, the kind of divorce meant to punish, and it did. My mother left with nothing. But that was okay. All she wanted were her children. And she got us, all 4 of us, except for every other weekend. Her other prize? The decrepit 2-seater Toyota work truck that had to be pushed to jumpstart. As the oldest, it was my job to sit in the passenger seat, twin babies in my lap, toddler at my side, and hold the steering wheel while my mother pushed and dug her feet into the ground, heaving that rusted old machine to life. Watching her struggle, I tried to push away the thought of being dead weight on her shoulders. Before the divorce, we'd been poor but provided for. Now we'd gone from poor to hungry. Hunger was a constant grating on my gut, consuming my day like an obsession. Everything that I focused on was first filtered through these thoughts. When will I eat? What will I eat? When will I eat again? Mom's minimum wage, scraped together with child support, got us a cheap, roach-infested apartment in a bad neighborhood. My baby sisters and I slept in a small room with 2 twin beds pushed together. On the weekends, she cleaned a church in exchange for a box of food. We don't take handouts, she'd say with fierce determination, staring into an invisible future, destination where only she could see. Some might have felt embarrassed taking that food, standing in line, but hunger trumps shame. I loved that box of food like it was a Christmas present. There was peanut butter, jelly, bread, top ramen, canned veggies, tortillas, a tub of margarine, and dried milk to mix with water. Not bad once you got past the chunks. I'd look at pictures in cookbooks while I ate. My father kept our house, and in that house was a refrigerator filled with food. Real milk, juice, Doritos, meat and cheese sandwiches, brand name mayo, ice cream, Kraft mac and cheese, hot dogs, hamburgers, Nesquik. In that house, I had my own bedroom, a big TV, VHS movies, and a backyard. There were family events. Birthdays, holiday parties, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandma. I tried to ignore the feeling that I was a guest, sitting on the margins of a happy family. I tried to ignore the desperate yearning to belong to them, while at the same time ignore the guilt of knowing as I sat among them, my mother sat alone. We had no family. My mother's family was filled with addicts, pedophiles, and criminals. She escaped long ago and wasn't going back. Her girls were her family, and she ours. All summer, we were shuffled back and forth between our old house and the apartment, between having and wanting, between a bitter and vengeful father and a depressed yet determined mother. This particular weekend, my favorite cousin came to sleep over. My dad offered us his bed and he'd sleep on the couch. I'd never slept in his bed before, so this was a special treat. His bed was built for a king, with thick wooden pillars and a flat wood roof, paneled with mirrors facing down. I used to lay across the plush velvet and satin comforter, look up in the mirrors, and imagine that one day it could be my bed. That night, my little sister, the toddler, slept between us. We giggled restlessly until we fell asleep. I awoke to a chill and a tickle. The tickle was between my legs. I opened my eyes and looked up into the mirror above me. An image of a hand reaching across my body, tucked into my panties, came hazily into focus. Whose hand is that? Oh, God. It's my father's hand. I lay frozen, feeling his fingers brushing the top of my pubic bone, playing with the first sprouts of hair, trying to reach further. Abruptly, he pulled his hand away and ran from the room. My heart pounded with deafening swishes in my ears, my t-shirt lifting slightly with each pulse. He knows I'm awake. I couldn't move. It was as though my true self had receded and the shell of me could not be commanded. I lay there feeling all of my body at once like a passive observer. The heaviness of my frame sank into the bed. The skin he touched had an odd sensation that was meant to be stirred at a much later time by someone who was not my father. A wave of shame hit me. I stared up at myself. My image stared back, like a soul had just departed, watching me from above. My oversized t-shirt, borrowed from him, had risen up above my waist. Did he pull it up? The rest of me lay exposed. My panties, slightly lowered on my hips, bunched up across my pelvic bone, were stretched and askew. The exposure of my skin felt like I'd brought this on myself, as though my bareness were an invitation. The deep breathing of my sister and cousin next to me grounded me in reality. I breathed out slowly, quietly. This isn't a dream. The alarm clock read 12:13 a.m. I replayed the moment and other memories emerged. My dad's face looking in through the bathroom window as I showered, him apologizing, "I didn't know you were there." How many times did I not see him? Waking up to him standing over me, "You needed a blanket." How many times did I not wake up? Him staring into my dressing room. I was unclothed. "Don't worry, I can't see anything." Me, a little girl in a tub with him asking me to reach for a toy between his legs. My stomach lurched. How could I have forgotten that? These memories were a patchwork quilt, the final square placed in its center, revealing the pattern. A question reverberated in my mind. Were you ever my father? I heard him walk past the door and my heart squeezed tight. I stood my post, staring out the window, hyper alert, waiting for morning to come, as if light would protect me. As the sky went cobalt blue, exhaustion set in. Wanting to sleep, worried he'd return, I climbed over my sister in the middle of the bed, using her as my shield. A fact I'm forever ashamed of. I pulled the blanket over us. Will this be enough? I awoke again to a tickle. The blanket was down. His fingers were running along the line of my panties on my backside. I jumped and turned over to look at him. He quickly gathered my sister, who was still sleeping, and mumbled something about letting us sleep, and left. This time I felt nauseous. God, make this a dream. The day came. I hurried to play with my cousin outside and stayed gone until my mom came to pick us up that afternoon. I told her that night. Aerosmith's song, Janie's Got a Gun, came on the radio, a song about a girl being abused by her father. Mom, This is a sad song, isn't it? She looked at me, her eyes penetrating me. I said one sentence and she knew. That bastard! I was relieved. I'd given my burden to my mother. She shouldered it now. She paced the room in a heated debate with herself. I'll kill him! No, I'll turn him in! No, I'll kill him! I watched her, imagining each scenario, anxious to see what side of the coin she'd land on. He was arrested. He denied it. My mother pleaded with him not to victimize me again. My God. He admitted it. His one redeeming, virtuous act. He went to prison and became a registered sex offender for life. I went to counseling. He went to counseling. And that sounds like a very happy ending. But my father's hand did much more than my young mind could comprehend at the time. His hand had all but severed my relationship with his family, who rallied around him, first disbelieving and later, after his admission, as his support. Favorite cousin gone, aunts gone, uncles gone, grandma gone. My father's hand opened a gate that wasn't his to open, it was his to guard. His hand carved a father out of my life. In its place, so many predators came. Within a year, I lost my virginity many times over. I never learned how to say no. I never learned why to say no. I learned that I could endure anything. Endure and recede. At 17, I became a dancer. And I don't mean a ballet dancer. I stayed in that life for 7 years. I turned to women when I was tired of finding my father's hand among the men in my life. It took a long time. But I have my own hands now. My hands have wrestled away his grip on the trajectory of my life. My hands have nurtured true intimacy with a husband, in children, in sisterhood. My hands have reached within and pulled me back into the fullness of being, a temple of joy. My hands have found strength through vulnerability. I embrace this world with my arms wide open. I bare myself to it. Can't you see? Can you see me? I'm still a good girl.
It's the first week in our new place and I'm walking home from school to our new apartment. I'm 7. When my mom died, we moved away from our family home. And if that wasn't hard enough, now my dad's in the hospital. Even though all of this is happening, I am North Dakota fierce. All guts and long blonde hair. Our neighbor lady who lives 2 doors down from us is in her yard. She smiles and says, "Hi." Her smile is like an open door inviting me in. "Hi," I say, finding I am not the least bit shy with her. We talk like we're old friends. She asks about school. I'm in the 2nd grade and I go to St. Michael's School. My name is Madonna Rose and I live with my 3 brothers and my pop. And my 2 older brothers, Fred and Frank, are in college. Eugene is in high school. "And your parents?" she asks. "Well, my dad is in the hospital and we're waiting for him to come home." "What's your father's name?" "Frederick Rose." Then, as if thinking aloud, she says, "Someone in our church by that name died recently." I blinked. The breath catches in my throat. A sense of panic is roaring around me, threatening to swallow me whole. I blurt out, I have to go home now." And I run. My head is reeling and thoughts are swirling as I run. Is it true? Not Daddy. Yes. In my heart, I know it is. I arrive at our apartment to find my oldest brother standing in the kitchen. I am filled with indignation as I proclaim, I know what happened. I know my daddy is dead. I cannot remember what he said. I walked into my room and I wondered, why didn't anyone tell me? My stomach felt like it was turning inside out and my mind was racing. And then a wave of terror swelled up and consumed me. First, my mother died, then my father. They were there, holding me, cuddling me. I could crawl into their laps and tuck myself into them. And then they just disappeared. I wondered what else my brothers were not telling me. I was so filled with fury. I wanted to yell as loud as I could at my brothers and push them away, but I also wanted to cling to them for dear life. No one explained how he died. How was I to know that I actually already knew? A week or so back, I had found Daddy. Like every other day, I ran happily into the apartment after school to greet my dad and tell him about my day. But this time, instead of finding him waiting for me, arms outstretched, what I saw was just blood. Blood everywhere, thick and red, and on the cold hardwood floor and under the velvety couch. My eyes dart across the couch to the leg of his khakis with the dark red stain. My father is slumped to one side. I cannot see his face. I don't know what is wrong. My stomach starts to hurt, and I feel sick, and I'm not sure what this means, and I want to cry. And then in a flash, the strong arms of my brother scoop me up protectively. He pulls me close and runs out of the apartment with me in his arms. He runs down the creaky stairs of the second-story apartment. He is so quiet. I hold my breath. What is happening? As my brother drives, I'm reeling with dread. I want to hug my dad and make it all better. I know my dad is already so sad. He'd already lost the use of half of his body because of the stroke he had after Mama died. He could barely get words out. I saw the pain in his eyes, even as he tried to speak. Donna. He would get out painfully as he reached for the right way to say Donna. I think of this and I want to cry again, but I just can't. Right now, I swallow hard. My brother leaves me with a friend of the family and he runs out of the house. Somehow, that night, because of all the blood, I drew to the conclusion that my father had died of a heart attack. And no one told me any different. I live in Fargo, North Dakota with my brother and his family. I'm a sophomore in high school. I'm at the public library, one of my favorite escapes. I continued to believe that my father had died of a heart attack until I was 14 years old. I was reading a magazine article about what happens when a person has a heart attack, and there was no mention of blood. Yet, what I remembered was a lot of blood. Now, this had me puzzled, and I had begun thinking about that day that I had pushed deep down into my memory. What about all of that blood? What did that mean? I went home and I asked my sister-in-law what happened. What really happened to my father? She looked at me struck, in shock, but said nothing. Where did all that blood come from? I asked. Still no answer. I was insistent. My sister-in-law called my brother, who was traveling, to talk to me. I cannot remember the conversation yet. It came out that my father had put a gun into his mouth. A tornado of emotions flooded my body. I could not believe it, yet it was true. I was suddenly 7 years old again, looking at his body, the blood on his slacks and on the couch. I could not hold back the wave of tears that poured, and I yelled and I cried. I was betrayed. I was crushed. I was abandoned. And then it passed, and we never talked about it again. It became clear to me that it was a family secret. I learned that my grandmother was never told how her son had died. And we never really talked about them, Mom or Dad. There were no lovingly framed photos of my parents in our homes after their death. There was no recollection of pleasant memories around the kitchen table with them in a picture, although I understood my brothers loved them. But still, I had no one to fill the blanks about who my parents were as people or as parents. The only picture I had was the one that expanded in my imagination. I simply didn't know what it would have been like to have them at graduations or at my wedding. If a teacher asked me what my father did for a living, I would deflect, maybe ask about them, anything to get the attention off of me. So I put my head down, I went to school, and got good grades. Moving on was what we did. Moving on was survival. I was 40 when I started to talk about it. I began what would turn out to be life-changing therapy. Early on, my therapist asked what I thought about my parents having died so early on in my young life. I remember tossing it off. Oh, I have dealt with that. And she explained, that was not the way it worked. And indeed, she was right. It wasn't. Not talking about things, it turns out it doesn't make them invisible. One by one, day by day, the secrets made their way to the surface. Laid bare to be trekked through with tears and a well of grief so endless, I thought I would never find my way out. And then, relief. And then a recognition of my insane resilience. So much so that whenever I am stopped by something life throws at me, all I have to do is remember that 7-year-old I was. Long blonde hair, North Dakota fierce, all guts.
He wasn't someone I would have looked at twice. He was older than I, a bit round around the edges, a little effeminate, really. The way he carried his magenta swim trunks down to the beach on a hanger. He was always a dandy, trimming his red-gray beard just so, everything so nicely pressed. And he talked all the time on a non-stop stream of effervescent ideas that always led back to his favorite subject, himself. My husband and I had known him for years and always thought of him as a bit of a narcissistic idiot. But after a swim, he invited me to the Panikin Brock de Villa for coffee. No one had asked me to do anything in years. I mean, I'm a mom. I'm married. My life is a closed system with internal feedback loops that refer back to my family, my husband, my responsibilities over and over again. Coffee? At the Panikin? I felt like a girl. Something within my mind altered as I sat at that cafe overlooking the ocean and listened to his voice. Perhaps he said some flattering things. Perhaps he merely asked me about the book that I was writing, my first. Mostly, I remember feeling the flow of his words wash over me like a warm wave. I felt all tumbled about, relaxed. I do remember talking about my husband. invoking his name perhaps like an amulet. As I felt something liquid rise in me like xylem in the springtime, it was strange, heady. Considering it was simply coffee between friends, it wasn't a date, was it? He could have been gay for all I knew. It crossed my mind when he asked where my handsome husband was. My husband was with our child, and there I was alone in public with another man. I liked it. I wanted to see him again. And when he asked for my email address, I gave it to him. At home, my husband and I were traveling through a long, dark tunnel of despair. We had lost our second child only 6 weeks before. Our child, 16 weeks in utero, had, it turned out, a small piece from chromosome 8 missing. A genetic puzzle piece integral to nearly every organ system. A missing piece. Vital. Fatal. It was left to us to decide if he lived in pain or if he died in peace. And now we had to live with the decision. We were both grieving in our own ways. My way was to seek comfort, talking with friends and family, visiting familiar places, indulging in small luxuries. My husband's way was to seek isolation, retreating to his art studio or garage. I remember feeling so cold, physically ice cold. I wanted my mother. I wanted the warmth of someone who loved me. My new man and I began emailing daily. He'd send poetry and share thoughts and ideas about the world, philosophical ramblings on nature, of art and life. He recommended books to read and movies to see, and I read and saw them all. But it was the subtext of his words, the subtext of his assignments that grabbed me. When he told me about the PBS documentary he'd seen on geishas and how they were able to have sex without getting pregnant, was he suggesting that we do that? I felt a frisson of fear. When he told me to watch Ghost World, where an older man seduces a younger woman, was he suggesting that too? When he had me read Silence of the Lambs and all of the following books telling me that Hannibal Lecter was his favorite character, was he Hannibal and I Clarice? Poetry, conversations, movies, books, everything felt imbued with double entendre. I am enslaved by mystery. And he was a delicious mystery. And a disturbing one. He invited me to movies, to swim, to meet at bookstores, for readings, for lunch. I invited him to walk with me. Made a point to happen to be in the places he was likely to be in case I chanced run into him. Each meeting felt like a bite of forbidden fruit. Sour, bitter, tender, sweet. I was open with my husband as to where I'd been and with whom, but I was not open about how much I wanted to spend time with this man, or how much we were emailing. My husband was becoming increasingly agitated. One Saturday, I told him I was going to a movie with the man. While previously he had simply waved me out, this time he stopped, and he looked me in the eye. "No," he said. "I don't want you to see him anymore." Reluctantly, I agreed. I agreed because I didn't want a disagreement. I agreed because I didn't want a confrontation. I agreed, but I knew that I would not, could not stop seeing this man. For the first time in my life, I felt the delicious intrigue of being bad. For the first time, I understood why teenagers wanted to rebel, why they would lie and deceive. I was the girl who came home before curfew, the mom who never went out to see her friends. One morning, I got an email from him that sent shivers of pleasure and fear and alarm through me. I dreamed about you last night. I made plans to meet him again at a public pool. I met my man for coffee first and told him we couldn't meet anymore, that my husband didn't want us to see each other. He cocked his head and smiled. What do you want? I shivered. I couldn't speak. What did I want? What did I really want? I wanted, there's no better word for it, sin. I wanted to destroy everything I loved. I wanted to destroy myself. I wanted to blow up everything I knew and loved in a conflagration of illicit, self-destructive sex. I wanted to prove to the world that I was the monster I knew I was inside, the terrible mother who had let her baby go. I also wanted love, and to be loved. I wanted a husband who held me in his heart. I wanted forgiveness for the death of my son. I wanted my toddler to grow up with two parents who loved him and who loved each other. I wanted to be healed. Around this time, I read an article in a newspaper column entitled "The Birds and the Bees" about emotional adultery. The article described exactly what I was doing. I was straying from my marriage. Even though I had never touched this man, the article described the stages of an emotional affair. Casual talking, intimate talking about the problems in one's marriage, emotional connectedness, casual touching, intimate touching, full-blown affair. Emotional affairs are as damaging as physical ones, the article said, and I knew it was true. While I had not spoken of my marriage and troubles, it was only a matter of time. I did the only thing that I knew how to do. I prayed. I prayed as if my life depended on it. At the same time that I was looking for opportunities to meet my mystery man, I prayed for deliverance from the addictive feelings of lust and infatuation. I made plans to meet him again at a public pool for a lap swim, my hand shaking as I hit send on the email. Could I tell him that I wouldn't see him again? I didn't think that I could bear another loss. The end of mystery, of possibility, wonder, the depth of grief. When I got to the pool, I sat on the bleachers in my racing suit, my breathing shallow, my bathing cap and goggles dangling idly. I listened to families chatter, watched swimmers stretch, watching the locker room door, waiting. When he emerged, I gasped. The afternoon sun spilled over the pool deck, bathing eucalyptus tree trunks in golden light, illuminating everything, including my mystery man. There he was, a vision of wonder clad in a skimpy red Speedo. His middle-aged paunch glowing over his swimsuit like Santa's luminescent belly. In an instant, everything I had felt for so many months vanished completely. Drained from my body like air whizzing out of a balloon. My infatuation completely gone. I was free. Free at last. Thanking God's sense of humor, I was free at last.
You're not going to believe how I decided to make my first porno movie. It was a typical day in the summer of 1968, and I'm cruising into Echo Park, and I'm driving my powder blue Chevy Impala, and the top is down, and I can see everyone, and everyone can see me. Fred Halsted. I'm 28 years old. I'm here from San Jose. Been in LA a couple of years now. Longest I lived anywhere. See, growing up, my mom always moved us from place to place. You know, she was always looking for free places to stay and enough money to get by. Every time I made a new friend, well, we moved. When I was real little, like 3 and 4, I used to play with the lizards in the backyard while my mom was working and my brother was at school. So when I found LA, I stayed. First place I didn't feel so lonely all the time. Realizing you're gay in the 1950s, well, let's just say that when word got out, people were shunned from their families. Some of them lost their jobs. Some of them got beat up. So even back then, the unofficial rule was don't ask, don't tell. When I was a kid, maybe 12, we lived at the back of this old hamburger joint that my mom had fixed up and opened up. And me and my brother, we used to spend all day making hamburgers and milkshakes. And one day, I hear my mom screaming at these 2 guys. Get out! We don't serve faggots. Never forgot that. Once I got to LA, I needed money, so I got a job as a gardener. One of my gigs was for Vincent Price. Here's this rich guy, and he's gay, but nobody knows it, except everybody knows it. And that's Hollywood for you. You take your wife to the premiere, and then you fool around with the cabana boy and the pool later. I like the job because it keeps my body hard and Price doesn't seem to mind. But more than that, I love getting my hands in the dirt. I love planting seeds and watching them grow in these unique ways. Making something beautiful, something you wouldn't expect. Now, I'm in my neighborhood. And I'm driving down West Sunset Boulevard where I can be myself, at least sometimes. And there's one thing on my mind. Finding a guy to ball. And I stop at this red light and I'm looking around. And then my eyes stop. Look over at those 2 over there. The perfect pair. One of them, he's over 6 feet tall. And he's a real stud. He's got this rock-hard chest, and it pulls his cotton shirt tight, and his hair creeps out from his sleeve around his collar, and it's just the way I like. And the other one, well, he's much younger. He's got like a boyish face, and he's wearing white shorts and this blue cardigan sweater. A twink. My favorite type. And I rev my engine to get their attention. I love the nakedness of it all, the honesty of it, everything so out in the open, if you know where to look. And the light turns green, I roll into the intersection, and my eyes feast on this pair, one of them, and then the other looks back at me, and their eyes linger. The scene has began. I pull the engine over and I throw it in park, and the stud and twink, they walk right up, and the stud, he leans up against the passenger door and he says, "You want to grab a beer?" The invitation. And I kill the engine and my leather boots hit the ground. I slap my palms against my dirty Levi's, releasing puffs of dust and dirt in the air. "Look at this package," the twink says, under his breath, but I hear him the way he wants me to hear him. And I look at him and I say, "I know a place right up the block. We'll follow you." And the 3 of us, we all walk in silence towards this bar, and it's the kind of place that always smells like stale beer, and you can't tell the difference between 1 in the afternoon and 1 in the morning once you get inside. And so the stud, he orders the beers, and the twink, he passes real close behind me. And as he passes me, I feel the brush of his hard dick against my back. Now see, the real action's about to begin. So the twink and I are in this tight one toilet room. Not a word passes between us. It's an unspoken code of safety. Fraternity. It holds true. And I release the top button of my jeans, making some room, and the twink shoves me back against the door. And he drops down to his knees, and I'm surprised by his forcefulness. Aggressive for a twink. And the door opens behind me, and I hear the stud's voice. I told you not to start without me. And the stud, he puts his strong, hard hands on my shoulders, and I hang in anticipation of the soft, wet touch of lips in more places than one, and I suddenly feel cold metal clasps around my wrists. You guys are into this. Fuck yeah. And the tight pinch against my skin, it makes my dick swell even more. And suddenly, the stud yanks the cuffs behind my back, and I'm in this position here. My hands are above my shoulder blades, and then I hear the words that I didn't expect to hear. Vice Squad! You're under arrest. Vice Squad? It is a joke. And the twink in front of me, he stands up and he brushes his knees off and he spits on my boots. My dick goes limp. And I realize it was all a setup. And they're about to drag me out of this bar in handcuffs. And I'm sweating. Who's going to see? And I retreat to the familiar lie. Don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask, don't tell. And I say, whoa, look, you guys, you got it all wrong. Look, I just came in here to take a piss. And the stud, he holds me in a stress position. Yeah, sure. Faggot. And it feels like my elbows are about to break. And I bend forward in pain only to have the twink kick me back upright. And every impulse tells me to break loose from their bondage. And I can't. And the twink, he laughs. And he says, that's the beauty of vagrancy. You don't actually have to do anything to be a vagrant. You just are. And my face, it flushes red. That charge is bullshit, and you know it. What I did was not a crime. On my watch it is. We're going to get rid of every single one of you one way or another. Permanently. Daddy drags me off. Luckily, I have enough money for bail, and I go home to John. He's my lover, and he's just as pissed. I mean, not about the cruising. I always go home to John. We're not monogamous. John's pissed about the NYPD, or the LAPD. And I'm charged with a misdemeanor crime. No real consequence other than a small fine. But I have to enter a plea. Publicly. Lewd vagrancy is the catch-all charge. The weekend before my arraignment, I spend each night tossing and turning. I can't decide how to plead. If I plead guilty, my case will go to trial. It'll be a long, drawn-out process, and the court's not going to believe a queer. The easy solution is plead guilty. I don't talk to my family much, so it's not like they're going to hear or find out. And I've been arrested for the same thing before, just like almost everyone I knew. We choke down the shame, and we plead guilty, just like they want us to. And it's Monday morning of my arraignment, and the bright sun is making me sick. And John and I were sitting in my car outside the courthouse, How do you plead? He asks. Fuck this. I throw the engine in gear and I speed away. What are you doing? He asks. This is wrong and everyone knows it. They'll put a warrant out for your arrest. Let them come find me. I'm not playing the games anymore. And in the months that followed, the moment that those cops slapped the cuffs on my wrists, it replays in my mind over and over. And the anger that was scorched into their eyes, it burns into my memory, and I can't hide from it. I need to confront it. And I decide that I had something to say about my sexuality. Something beautiful, something real, and honest about who I was and what I did. And I'd show the world. And that's how that's how I came to the decision. One night I turned to John and I told him, I'm gonna make a porno movie. A faggot fuck film. What do you know about movies? Nothing. 3 years later, my first film project was projected on the screens across the country. 1 movie, and then 2, and then 20. I can still claim that 2 of my films are the only gay pornographic films in the New York City Museum of Modern Art's collection. Permanent one.
He wasn't Daddy, of course. Nobody could be. But he made Mommy smile for the first time in a long time. And it was Easter. And he brought me the most beautiful gold satin rabbit. Jeez, I loved that rabbit. Then he touched me funny. All the time saying, what's up, Doc? That was how it began. Feeling bad and feeling good. All at the same time. No 5-year-old could figure it out. That was me before. It's 1968, the summer of love. That's rich. While my friends are primping for prom, I'm sitting here at 16, the youngest in the adult ward at Milford Psychiatric Institute. Geez, I love the name of that. It's like I'm getting a degree, not locked up for my own protection. Sounds weird, but I feel safe for the first time in years. And just thinking that makes my heart hurt. How did I get here? Even my friends at school don't know. There's a reason why kids don't tell. Hey, Mom, why is the ladder outside my bedroom window? Jack, she calls from my room. What's with the ladder? I'm just cleaning the gutters. I'll move it. A couple days later, the ladder appears outside my bathroom window. Jack, just cleaning the gutters again. We must have had the cleanest damn gutters in the neighborhood. I started changing my clothes in the closet. Then he started with the pajamas. Jack, why are Lynn's pajamas unbuttoned? Beats me, he shrugs. I don't say anything. I just want him to love me like my daddy does. Instead, Jack keeps coming every night. In the middle of the night, he pretends to go to the bathroom, picks up his toothbrush, and sets it down with the loudest click I've ever heard, just to make sure she doesn't wake up. When I hear the click, I know he's coming. I try to slow my heart rate down so he won't feel it beating out of my chest. I pretend I'm asleep. He pretends to believe me. Ever since he started, I have the same dream. I'm running down a dark alley, gasping for breath because someone's chasing me and is gonna kill me. I try to scream so someone will save me, but no sound comes out. I think maybe he's just trying to show me he loves me, in the only way he knows how. I think any family's better than no family. I can make this work, and nobody needs to know. Hey, Mom, I need a lock on my door. Oh, honey, no 12-year-old needs a lock on their door. Mom stuffs that right in with the mountain of other clues I've been leaving her. She's got a special mental closet marked "Do Not Examine." I know better than to get pissed. Soon after they were married, Jack got mad because I lost my hairbrush. He tossed my beautiful satin rabbit so hard it knocked a sliding wooden door off of its track. No telling what he'd do to me if I told. But then Jack took his games to a whole new level. 4 a.m. I hear the click. Jack crawls into bed behind me. I roll over, pretending to be asleep. He moves closer. I can feel his breath on my neck. I can't breathe. Jack keeps coming. I roll over, all the time pretending to be asleep. Now I've run out of space on the bed, and he's touching me. He won't stop. I don't even try to scream. No point. I just focus on the dogwoods on Uncle Max's painting, waiting for it to be over. Finally, he leaves. I want to take a shower, but that will wake everybody up. I try to sleep, but when I do, I always have the dream. I've given up on giving Mom clues. There's a reason why kids don't tell. 3 years pass, pretending all day, every day, that I'm fine. Just fine. Little Miss Achiever, head of the prom committee, president of student council, keeping up this happy family crap all day, every day. It's making me sick from the inside out. Mom sends me to a shrink, but nothing changes. Months pass. I take to praying. Dear God, please get me out of this. And darned if he didn't listen. I got busted for licking iodine off of my finger to see if it would kill me. Who would have thought that that would do it? I thought a lot about doing myself in, but evidently acting on it is a no-no. So I'm sitting here in a red brick building with metal fence aprons around the windows so we don't jump. It looks like a college for delinquents. My parents scrambled for a story. Officially, I had a little upset because there was too much pressure at school. As far as the hospital knows, I'm just depressed with suicidal ideation. We all know our diagnoses here. Most of us are in some kind of a drugged out suspended animation, hoping for or dreading visitors who waltz in after they've pasted on their super fake smiles. I smoke a pack a day, pretending to inhale, arguing over soap operas and the only TV on the sunroom. No, Nikki would never divorce Victor. Just trying to fit in with the adults. But my hands have stopped shaking, and that running for my life dream, gone. People are off their rockers here, but they're my people. I can sleep now, even though I know Bob, the male nurse, will come to check in on me. Who'd have ever thought that I would ever feel that safe? Thank you, Lord. Then yesterday, I heard a nurse say my insurance is running out. I've got 5 more days. I can't go home. I can't. I taste puke just thinking about it. I've got to find a way to stay. I see the shrink here 10 minutes a day, 3 times a week. And in all this time, he's had one moment of brilliance. He said, I use humor as a defense. And it's not working. This afternoon, I did my best to flunk group therapy. 4 days later, The meds have finally started to kick in, and they pronounce me cured. I tell myself everything is gonna be all right now. That it can be a whole new fucking chapter. Like Cinderella. Jack will get it. He'll get what he's done and he'll stop. And we could be a happy family. And I really start to believe it. We go on vacation the day after I got home. But instead of changing his tune, instead of getting what he's done, Jack spends the whole week exposing himself to me in public while swimming. I say nothing. If I do, what will happen to me? Will anyone believe me anyway? Will that rage he chokes down be burst free? I imagine him choking me. There's a reason why kids don't tell. Shit, it's gonna be okay, I tell myself, but I'm starting to simmer. As soon as we get back, Jack comes downstairs to gloat. Well, that was a fun vacation, wasn't it? He's daring me. Not for me, I mumble. And then, with those 3 little words, he just explodes. What? What did you say? We're looking at one another, eyes locked. His stare is a challenge. You come up here and tell your mother what you just said. I know what he's doing because he's done it 1,000 times. He scares the living crap out of me and I back down. That's our routine, and we are on the merry-go-round again. He grabs my arm, nearly ripping it out, and drags me upstairs so I can be face-to-face with my mother. He's daring me to tell her who he is and what he's been doing to me all these years. He's sure I'll fold. I kept quiet for 11 years. I kept quiet when they put me in the psych ward, when they took me on that whole psychotic vacation. I didn't say a goddamn word. But somehow, when he grabbed my arm this time, I was just done. Inside, I said, not this time. I'm done covering for you. Mom, do you know what he does to me? And the truth is out there. In the air. I can hardly breathe, but I know I feel better than I have in a long time.
And then there was the day that my mother's friend came over for tea. I was upstairs when I overheard. Any proposals for Sadia yet? Mom hesitated, then spoke with a bit of shame in her voice. No, but God willing, soon. My cheeks flushed. I was awash in a mix of embarrassment for my mom and rage for myself. It was clear. The eyes of the community were on her. I grew up in Long Island, New York. My parents were first generation from Pakistan. We belonged to the sect of Islam called Dawoodi Bohras, an offshoot of Shiism. We followed the traditions that have been going on for hundreds of years. Male matches were judged on their background, reputation, and profession. Women face different judgments. What's her personality? How tall is she? Is she pretty? Is she healthy? And then there was me, 25 years old, with an autoimmune disease no one had heard of called myasthenia gravis. It's a chronic disease with no cure. It meant that one day I could talk, but the next day I couldn't. One day I could walk, the next day I couldn't. I had always wanted to be a wife, but I was looking for my best friend. I wanted something different than my parents. My father treated my mom like a maid at times. He demanded a lot from her. I hardly ever saw them laughing together. I had other proposals, met them in person, but nothing was clicking. On a trip to Pakistan, my aunt mentioned someone new. His name was Salih. His mother and his aunt came to my aunt's home. They talked, I listened. After they left, my aunt showed me Ali's picture. Decent, I thought. When I returned home, his cousin called my mom asking if she could bring Ali over. Our first meeting was for lunch. It was a wintry, snowy day. When my mom told me he was coming, I was less than excited. I had plans to go car shopping. And I had just overcome an MG crisis. Due to steroids, my face was bloated, and I had acne everywhere. I was sure he would take one look at me and run the other way. When he came to the door, I was so nervous I couldn't face him yet. He spoke to my parents for a half hour. I could hear chuckles and laughter. When they moved into the family room, I knew I had to gather my strength and meet him. And our eyes met. Me, a shy bundle of nerves. Him, a tall, respectable man. And all eyes were on us. It was a formal meeting, but I was happy when he asked for my email address and we began corresponding. We talked hopes, career, hobbies. He loved playing the piano. I did too. He loved hiking and exploring nature. I did too. He cracked jokes. He made me laugh. This was not like my parents. This was the beginning of a real connection. We wrote 2 or 3 emails a day, and with each email, we grew closer, and my heart grew more invested. And then came the moment to tell him of my disease. I was terrified. Would he run? I decided to tell him over email. I remember hitting send with my fingers trembling, feeling stripped bare. I was so relieved when he wanted to meet again, coming to my home with an open heart and a box of Russell Stover chocolates. He asked MG-related questions as if it was a minor scrape, not a chronic illness. I knew I wanted to marry Ali when we went out together. We were in the car and he shifted in the seat and said, "Where do we go from here?" "I'm taking the highway and we will see the monuments." "No, Sadia. Where do we go from here?" he repeated. At the time, I felt that Ali was my savior, my ticket to freedom. Contrary to the path my parents took, with Ali, I could do what I wanted. I could break free from my overprotective parents and live out the dreams that were mine and mine only. I had always thought love at first sight was just that, a cliche. But here I was living it. I loved the terms of endearment that Ali had already started calling me, my favorite being Bibi, a respectful way to address a lady in Urdu. Countless other things, trivial and otherwise, that had unknowingly, unexpectedly joined our hearts together. But there was a hurdle. Both our parents had to agree. Mine were thrilled. I hoped his would be too. A week later, I got a call from Ali. I could hear the strain in his voice. Mom didn't take it as well as I thought she would. She said, no. I was awash in emotions. We had agreed not to tell anyone about my MG before we became officially engaged. What did you expect, Ali? I wanted to remain calm, but I could control neither my sarcasm nor my anger. Anger at Ali for telling his mother about my disease, and anger at her for not understanding. I felt out of control, like a puppet, my strings being pulled at the whim of the puppeteer. Her resistance confirmed my secret doubts. I was damaged goods. Honestly, I wish I didn't tell her anything, Sadia. Her son wants to marry someone with a disease she's never even heard of. Of course she's going to panic and say no. I was certain he could hear my heart hammering through the phone line. It jarred the silence like a referee's whistle, signaling an unexpected timeout, or in my case, the end of the game. If this didn't work, if his mother rejected me, would I ever get married? She's asked for some time. How much time? A deep breath. I wasn't sure if it was his or mine. A few days, I guess. I slouched on the edge of my bed. Sadia, this is our culture. We marry into a family and family cannot be ignored. There it was again. Our culture. Why couldn't we ignore what our families thought? As it often did, it all came back down to respect. Respect your elders. Don't go against their wishes. Give her some time. My stomach dropped. Had I lost Ali already? She knows that I have my heart set on you. And what if you can't convince her? Then you can cross me off your list and pick the next guy. That's not funny, Ali, I shot back. I knew he was trying to calm me down, and that's what I liked about him the most. I'm sorry, Sadia, but I promise we'll be stronger for it. A day passed, then 2, then 3. On day 4, I found myself trudging around the house, and an idea began to form. What if I wrote to his mother, shared with her from my heart? This was not done in our culture. Not ever done. Could I be so bold? Did I dare? And what if it backfired? But here was a man who I was beginning to love. Someone who I could envision spending my life with. I had to at least try. So I opened up my email and started writing. I didn't want her to think my life revolved around the disease because it didn't. I was able to work, to finish my master's even when the disease was at its worst. I was able to exercise and swim, to cook and do the laundry. I was able to socialize, to talk and laugh. I told her there was a good chance that the MG would go into remission. I did not tell her that on average it could take up to 5 years for remission to occur, and even then it was not guaranteed. I told her that having this disease, in spite of its drawbacks and repercussions, had made me a stronger person. I did not tell her how many nights I cried in prayer and in sleep when no one could understand me because my mouth would not let out any words. Scared as I was, it felt liberating to be free of the secret, or at least part of my secret. I had lowered my mask just enough to let her in. It may not have been the full truth, but it was more daring than any girl in my culture would have dreamed. Calmness spread from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. Whatever she decided, I knew in my heart that I would fight for Ali, and he for me. My hands felt clammy. I took in a deep breath, exhaled a prayer, and pressed send.
It's 5 a.m. Mom cries, Agaya, baby, daddy had a heart attack. 집에 와, come home. My heart drops. Okay, I'll be on the next plane. On the flight, I'm flooded with childhood memories of Dad, giving me horsey rides and reading me Bible stories and singing our bedtime hymn. Father, we thank thee for the night and for the pleasant morning light. Back then, I thought my father and the Holy Father were the same. When I get to the hospital, Mom takes me to intensive care. Dad's unconscious and hooked up to beeping machines. His gray face and inert body make my eyes tear. I whisper, Appa, 왔어요. No response. I shake his shoulder. Daddy, I'm here. I sing in his ear. Father, we thank thee. But his paper-thin eyelids remain closed. The nurse interrupts. Visiting hours are over. I follow Mom out the door. 먹었어? Have you eaten? No, I'm starving. Mom drives us to a cafe. After we order, she takes a deep breath, then sighs, tapping her heart with her fist. 아이고, it's finally time to tell you. She looks nervous in a way I haven't seen before. You have a secret brother. He was born 1 year after you. What? What are you talking about? At first I think it's a joke or a wrong translation. But her face is dead serious. Daddy and I were poor graduate students when I got pregnant. You and he were what Americans would call accident. We couldn't afford to keep the second one. Mom is like a train speeding down a track, like she's rehearsed what to say. She sips her coffee, then continues matter-of-factly. So, we give your brother to our best friends. The Hans. Mrs. Han had a hysterectomy and couldn't have her own baby. They desperately wanted a son. I feel hot, like she just threw her scalding coffee in my face. How could you do that? Be quiet, just listen. My hamburger arrives, but I'm not hungry anymore. After the waitress leaves, my mom continues. Reverend Han counseled us to give the baby to his brother and wife. In the Bible, Abraham and his barren wife adopt a son. He said, you already have a baby daughter and 2 older sons waiting in Korea to come to America. It's God's will. I'm astonished as I try to process this. Wait, Reverend told you to give your baby to his brother? Isn't that a conflict of interest? Shh, don't talk. I feel like a student in her class being scolded. I bite my tongue. Mom continues her lecture. His name is Richard. You know, Daddy studied political science. So he named him after the first American politician to officially recognize China. Richard Nixon. Daddy believed his name would be forever admired. My fists are clenched. Angry red crescents from my nails nearly cut my palms. But I don't feel pain. I feel numb. The Hans took Richard to Canada. Professor Han got a high-paid teaching job there. If we had kept Richard, we couldn't have finished our PhDs to become professors. Mrs. Han had to give up her career. Well, did you keep in touch? The 2 fathers vowed never to talk about the adoption again. But we mothers secretly exchanged a Christmas card. Here, I imagine Mom receiving a Christmas card, boasting, our Richard got a perfect SAT score, was a valedictorian, and earned a full scholarship to Harvard. Your Elise wants to be an actress? How cute. Now I know why Mom insisted I major in business. I picture a 2-horse race, jockeyed by our competing tiger moms. Mom continues, jolting me back to reality. 2 Christmas cards ago, Mrs. Han wrote that her husband died and she was ill. Last Christmas card, she wrote that Richard got a new job only 30 minutes from here. Don't you see? Reuniting us is God's will. I have a lot of questions, but I feel like I'm in shock. The waitress leaves the check. I look at my untouched burger, the fat congealed. Bile rises in my throat, but I swallow it down. I pay the bill and follow Mom to the car. We drive home in silence. I feel both incredulous and relieved. This missing piece of my crazy family puzzle is starting to fit into place. Entering the house as we slip off our shoes, Mom reveals even more. Daddy and I met Richard last year. But we kept it secret from you children. Now that Daddy might die and Richard would come to the funeral, I had to tell you. I choke up hearing Daddy might die and funeral. I already arranged for you to meet Richard for lunch tomorrow. Now go to bed. In the guest room, I weep into my pillow. How could Mom have given away her baby? I am now a mother. I feel desperate to hug my son and never let go. Were Mom and Dad selfish or selfless? I can't sleep. My mind is racing. So reaching for my phone, I Google what to do when your mom says you have a sibling who was given up for adoption. Surprisingly, there's a match. I read, there is a ripple effect in adoption on the kept sibling, even if the parents never reveal the secret. The adoptee may wonder all his life about his birth family. I realize our stories are intertwined. Exhausted, I finally fall asleep. The next morning, I can't decide what to wear. Does this dress say, "Sorry, our parents kept me and gave you away"? In retrospect, I wish I had grown up with a younger brother. Maybe we could have comforted each other when Mom and Dad fought and when they left. How would our lives have been different if he had stayed with our family? I'm nervous as I walk to the restaurant. I meet my secret brother for the first time over paella. He wears a button-down shirt and wrinkled chinos. He doesn't really look like me, but we don't really look alike, me and my older brother, so... Shaking my hand, he says, "Nuna, I'm Richard." My name is Elise. I think, who's Nuna? Then I realize I'm Nuna. Nuna is a Korean term of respect for older sister. I've never been called Nuna before. I'm so happy to finally meet you. I discovered I was adopted 20 years ago, so I've been waiting a long time. I'm sorry, I just found out last night. I want you to know I had a happy childhood with loving parents. I was lucky to have a stay-at-home mom who cooked my favorite foods after school. We lived in the same home for 20 years. Did you have a happy childhood too? Sure. I lie. The empty apartment where I lived alone flashes in my mind. Dad, then Mom, returned to Korea to teach. My older brothers didn't want to take care of me. I was only 15. Suddenly, I feel jealous of him. Bro, you dodged a bullet. My adoptive dad was a respected professor in Canada. I guess that's why I became a professor. Really? I'm a professor too. Well, I was recently promoted to full professor. Congratulations. Now I feel competitive. I haven't achieved full professor and probably never will. Do you think your mother and father would have wanted to meet me after 46 years if I weren't a PhD and professor like them? No way, Jose. Plumber wouldn't cut it. Yes, of course. I hope I sound sincere. Are you and your brothers close? We only see each other every few years. As my oldest brother says, in America, good sibling means you don't cause each other headaches or ask to borrow money. After lunch, we promised to introduce our families soon. Back home, I scrutinized our family portrait taken 40 years ago. Dad, Mom, 2 older brothers, me. I'm the youngest. Then I imagine a young Richard standing next to me. I didn't know then that I was living with a ghost, a secret brother. Mom interrupts my reverie. We have to go back to the hospital. What did you think of Richard? I like him. We have a lot in common. But why didn't you tell me about the adoption earlier? Koreans don't talk about it. And then she looks at me with a glint of fear in her eyes. Don't tell your husband or your son. She purses her lips closed. As soon as I get home, I tell my husband. A few days later, I tell my son. Years later, I take pen to paper. The only way to express my feelings in a family that stifles the truth. As I write, I feel disloyal because Mom wants me to keep the secret, because Koreans don't talk about it. As I write, I feel empowered because I'm breaking the chain of secrecy, so the next generation won't have to carry it. And the more I write, the more I realize I may be Korean, but I'm also American. And Americans talk about it. And write about it. And create art about it.